Hey, what's up, guys? So I busted my butt on the last Knife News update video. I still need to update the description box, but today I wanted to do a quick YouTube video that's just really for me. I want to talk to you once again about the Buell 1190sx. There's been a lot of talk about this bike and the new Hammerhead that's been released, and how these bikes are an 8-year-old platform. If you pay attention to the motorcycle world and have a favorite bike, an 8-year-old platform is actually very, very young. The 1190sx was released in 2014. I don't remember if the R was released in 2012 or 2013. Regardless, even a 10-year-old platform is actually still very young, and the only thing that the Buell of today is missing as compared to its competition is a 6-axis IMU. So for everybody complaining about how it's just an 8-year-old bike being resold, let's take a look at how far the 1190sx has actually fallen as compared to the absolute top level of hyper naked bikes on the market. And I want you to also consider, I've talked to Buell a little bit. I think they are going to refine and update the aesthetic when they can, and probably along with that do a 6-axis IMU. So when we're looking at these specs, consider what that would do for the bike. So I'm going to put the specs on the screen as I'm talking. The Buell has 185 horsepower at 10,600 RPM and 101 foot-pounds of torque at 8,200 RPM. The bike weight, wet without fuel, is 414 pounds. Wet without fuel, so we're guessing that there's oil, a battery, and radiator fluid in there. I think it's safe to say your dry weight is looking at right around 400 pounds. So, how does that stack up to the competition? Well, let's start out with the Aprilia 210 V4, often hailed as just one of the best nakeds on the block. Makes 173 horsepower at 11,300 RPM, 89 foot-pounds of torque at 9,000 RPM, and the dry weight that I found varied, but it looks like the dry weight is 445 pounds. I found a couple of different numbers, but I was looking at the wet weight of like 470. That's a chonky chonker. Okay, so that's from Italy. Let's go over to England with the Triumph Speed Triple RS, hailed as probably one of the most balanced hyper-nakeds ever made, making 177 horsepower at 10,700 RPM and 92 foot-pounds of torque at 9,000 RPM, coming in with a dry weight of 437 pounds. Again, it's kind of heavy. Maybe the closest... Oh, let me just say, for the Speed Triple with an inline 3 to make 177 horsepower with peak power made at 10,700 RPM, and the Buell 1190sx with the same displacement, essentially a 1200 and a 1200. I believe the new Speed Triple is a 1200. Someone will correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. So for the Buell to be making peak power almost the exact same point and make more power with a V-twin than an inline triple is something that, if you're thinking the Buell's outdated, you really need to think about, because that's not how this works. The most comparable bike to the Buell is probably the Super Duke, constantly hailed as one of the most beast mode hooligan bikes on the market, just raw, unrefined beast mode power. And it's probably the closest also because it's the only V-twin on this list. It does have a 100cc engine Advantage. It's a 1300cc engine, making 177 horsepower at 10,000 RPM and 103 foot-pounds of torque at 8.3 thousand RPM, 8,300, with a claimed dry weight of 396 pounds. Moving on to the top of the heap for the Hyper Nakeds. The MV Agusta 1000RR is making 208 horsepower at 13,000 RPM and 86 foot-pounds of torque at 11,000 RPM and has a claimed dry weight of 410 pounds. And basically the undisputed champion of these Hyper Nakeds is the Ducati Streetfighter V4, making 208 horsepower at 13,000 RPM, 90 foot-pounds of torque at 9,500 RPM with a claimed dry weight of 397 pounds. So I want to say, if I didn't already, that comparing stats on paper is kind of silly. For instance, the MV Agusta and the Ducati have the same peak horsepower, but the MV Agusta is known for being a dog at low RPMs, like actually doggish, which doesn't necessarily probably matter so much at the track, but for streetable power, it's an incredibly important thing. Whereas the Ducati is not known for that. The Buell, none of the other bikes necessarily are known for that. So peak horsepower figures and peak torque figures are not necessarily anything, really. They don't directly translate to lap times. They don't directly translate usually to quarter mile times, although they probably translate most closely to quarter mile times to anything else. But comparing bikes on paper is a little bit silly. I'm doing it anyways because that's what people do, so I might as well do it. So you have a horsepower rating that is the third highest. I did put the Kawasaki H2 something or other in here. I actually kind of forgot about it. I think it makes about 190 horse. That's kind of a fat, ugly pig anyways. We're kind of talking about exotic bikes here. So, it's making the third highest horsepower rating out of all of these Hyper Nakeds. The second most foot-pounds of torque, with weight that is closely comparable to the lightest bikes on the list. So essentially, we can sit here and talk all day about how, oh, Buell is just reselling yesterday's bike at tomorrow's prices. The price is on par or cheaper than most of these bikes for a new Buell. And if it had a 6-axis IMU and comparable suspension to any other bike, and what I mean by that is a lot of these other bikes have different options for suspension, whether you get top-tier Öhlins or whether you get electronic intelligent suspension or whatever. You've got a bike that is at the literal top of the heap on paper, lacking only essentially a 6-axis IMU. So yesterday's bike was about 8 years ahead, is what I'm getting at here. All of the other bikes that people look at and consider to be freaking heavyweight, awesome naked bikes don't even come close. The Ducati Monster 1200, the, I don't know, CBR 1000, I don't know if anybody takes that thing seriously. The Yamaha MT10 SP makes, I don't know, 156 horsepower. You know, all of these Japanese bikes, besides the H2, whatever their naked is, when it comes to power, don't even come close. And I'm pretty sure, and the H2 isn't going to come close on the track, even if with all of its 6-axis IMU and stuff like that. It ain't going to come close to the Buell on the track, because in reviews, as far as I can tell, it's not really a track setup bike. It's really more of a street-oriented bike. So, basically, I'm just doing kind of this video for me. For anybody who cares out there and who's going to look it up or whatever, the doggone 1190sx, if they can sell enough freaking bikes, which bikes are rolling off the line right now, and I'm hoping this summer to go up to Grand Rapids and hang out with these dudes. If they can sell enough bikes to get an updated electronics suite in the 1190 Hammerhead and the 1190sx, then with that one addition, they'll have gone from a bike from 8 years ago to a bike that's one of the top contenders on the market. It's really, really amazing. The other thing is, I feel like here's what sucks about Buell, is because the people that love Buell the most hate nothing more than Buell. It's freaking weird. Buell people are like libertarians. They hate everybody else, and they hate all of the other Buell people too. Like, it's bizarre. Everybody, I don't know. It's weird. I'm like super stoked to revive the Buell name, even though Eric is no longer involved. Super stoked for such an amazing American-made sport bike. They're about to release 2 new prototypes they're going to be taking deposits for after Daytona. A psycho, hyper, dirt-focused bike and a tour. But, I don't know why it's so, but I don't know that Buell was the name to bring back, because people are so polarized about them. I want them to succeed, but it seems like you're on the Buell pages and everybody's like, wait, Buell's putting an engine other than an air-cooled Harley Davidson in the bikes now? Where have you been for over a decade? Wait, these are just the old 1125 Rotax engines, right? So the 1190 engine is based on the 1125 Rotax engine. The 1190 engine is an American-made, American motor. And it's just crazy to me. Like, I don't want Buell to have to sell based on Americana, but it's crazy to me that they can't sell just based on Americana. And Lord willing, we'll see them restyle the 1190sx like the Thunderstorm, I think it was, or the Typhoon. That's what it was. Lord willing, we'll see online bike sales become more popular, more common, because bike dealerships all over this country, like car dealerships for new cars, are freaking empty anyways. People are ordering online anyways, so it might finally be the time for that to be successful for motorcycles. We'll have to see. But anyways, I'm wishing them the best. And guys, I understand wanting the 6-axis IMU. 10 years ago, I would have called you a freaking weenie, but today, I get it. But freaking, it's coming, I'm sure. And you don't need, everybody's looking at these specs and they're looking at what the bikes are capable of on the track as if it will be their career to make money, to be on the most successful bike made so that they can make their living racing. And not only will they never see a racetrack, they probably won't ever unlock more than 5 or 10% of the bike's potential. They won't ever get close to the bike's potential in a quarter mile. They probably won't even get close to the bike's potential just roll on in a straightaway. So it's pretty silly. At the end of the day, really what you should buy a bike based on what you like, what you can afford, maintenance cost, ease of maintenance, what you like the looks of, what you like the sound of. Because sitting here and comparing who's got 2 or 3 extra horsepower or less horsepower, even honestly, bro, if the Ducati Streetfighter V4 is 397 pounds and the Buell is 400 pounds and the Aprilia is 445 pounds, that weight's not going to make a difference for us on the track or anywhere else. It is important, but anyways, alright, I'm done, I guess. The Buell's freaking sick.